Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. I'm just setting up here. I know I'm a minute or two early. Oh gosh, and then I just saw what I look like on Zoom. That being said, we're having a little bit of technology issues on a building-wide level here in the Aptos office, so I may have to hop over to the iPad. If we continue to have them, I will postpone this into next week. However, we're going to go with everything is going to flow nicely. Just want to prepare you for that in case anything happens. So that being said, thank you very much, everyone, for coming to this month's update on the economy. I am going to take my glasses off this time because I got a lot of comments last time that my glasses made my face look very glary and I shouldn't wear them. I will need to put them on here and there because I'm 56 years old and I actually need them to see just about everything around me at this point. But you may see me putting them off and on again, just because of comments made. I am listening to you, and I certainly will make it a more pleasant viewing experience. That being said, this is a really important one to really bring up to please, 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 please share share questions on this one. Okay, so this is a topic, as you can all imagine, that is very um, let's just put it this way: people are there's a lot of emotion to what's happening in the political world right now. We have a new administration in. Whether you really love them or really dislike them, there's a lot connected to this right now. So I'm going to do a couple of just a little bit of set the stage here for a few minutes, and then I will hop right into it. Please send your questions over throughout, not only now but throughout this. Anything you want, I will answer. I will do my very best to answer all the questions that come across. The highest intention of this today is to be a place where you can get economic information without bias, without the usual unique, intricate nature of a lot of what comes across the news right now, to try and get that for you. And I'll tell you a little bit too about sources and places to look if you have information, if you want to take it further. You should never just take it my word for it. Yes, I'm an economist. Yes, I've been doing this well over 30 years. Yes, I'm a geek and this is my life. However, it's always really good idea to know where you can also get information to come to your own conclusions and that. With that being said, all right, now we'll get this official. For those of you who are new to this webinar, my name is Kristina Kuprina, and I'm the CEO and Chief Economist at Sequoia Wealth Advisors. And I do these webinars about once a month or so, just kind of as an update on the economy, where we're at. The highest intention of it is to get you the information to answer questions that you may have, but also in a format that is easy to understand and accessible, right? As opposed to something that's dry and boring, or nowadays a lot of it's incredibly biased to one direction or the other. So since we are talking about today the new administration and the new economy, the other thing I do want to preface for those of you that are new to this is that I do not belong to either political party, and I am not here to support or not support one side or the other. My intention is to keep this as neutral as possible. I will talk about things from an economic perspective, and sometimes that can come across as I'm not focused on other areas that are important to people, social issues and things like that. I see it as you're here to hear on the economy, and that's what I'm going to focus on. And I do understand that there's a lot of different ways of seeing the world, and there's many different situations or scenarios where people can see the economy or the economic components not being the most essential. So that being said, that is my role here. And if I'm doing a good job, if everybody thinks I'm too liberal or too conservative, I guess. So yes, please send in your questions. The highest and most complex part of putting this together right now is there is tremendous amounts of misinformation in the news. Probably not a surprise to anyone who's paying attention. There's a tremendous amount of it. And it's really across the board. It's not really one news program or another news program. It's even spread into areas that I used to see as being more politically neutral or more fact-based as opposed to narrative-based. But it's creeping everywhere right now. It's gotten worse and worse. I'm not sure if it's an AI thing or it's just a lot more people are trying this. But that being said, it is challenging. So when I do present information or facts or figures or data, I'd like to tell you also the source, and I tend to use government sources. I tend to use economic sources. If there's an article or a comment that I see on the news media, the traditional news media, I will generally take that and put it into Chat GTP4 and ask it, tell me what's facts and data as opposed to narratives and whatnot. And it will clean it up really quickly. I've almost gotten myself in trouble a couple of times by almost repeating false information because it seemed to be true to me, it seemed to come from a true source, and it in fact was not verified. So that's important. So if you do watch the news and you're like, is this true or not? That's a really great feature of ChatGTP 4. Be sure to use the 4 version because that's the most up to date, especially with the fact that the news is changing by the moment. So that being said, new administration, new economy. I feel like this we need to timestamp this for February 20th, 2025, because within an hour of me finishing this webinar, it could be entirely different. This is how quickly things are moving. So on a very high level, Trump has been in office now for a month, so there was not a specific exact timing on of this webinar, but that being said, he's been in office for a month, and things are moving very, very quickly. Much more quickly than I expected once he'd been elected, but before he was in office. Things are moving quickly and moving across the board on all fronts. The idea of this is, based on his words, is he promised to do these things when he was elected, and he's darn well going to do them. So pretty much a lot of the focus has been on the areas that were very popular during the election, and a lot of the reasons why people say they voted for him. He is focused on cutting back on government spending, what he or the analysis considers to be waste and fraud and things of the like. I'll talk a little bit more about that because that's going to be the biggest part of the economic component. Focused on immigration with the deportation of people here that are criminal, have a criminal history, and are here illegally. Focusing on what he would like to do is lowering taxes, but no taxes on tips, Social Security, and I believe overtime as well. So really that kind of populist things that he ran on is what he's focused on. So today I'm going to focus more on the economic components, which a lot of them actually are. Some of the other elements that he's very focused on has been on international relations. Again, in his words, making America great again, strong, and kind of reimagining a lot of our relations that we have with other countries to, as he says, to rebalance it to more economically fair things like tariffs, trade agreements, and other things that we have with other countries. And sometimes this is a negotiating tool for him to get other things done that he wants to get done. Other times he's darn serious about it. In a world, and I'm going to start on the tariff area because the economic component, in a world where you have a rapidly shifting landscape and something like tariffs, some companies are at risk. Some companies it has no impact on. So that's something that we want to watch. So whether it's negotiating tariff, the bluff type of thing, which I shouldn't say bluff because he may actually go through it if he didn't get what he wanted to accomplish. But any companies that are doing business overseas, whether they're selling overseas or if they're receiving components or products from overseas, can be at risk depending on the countries they do business with, and also what, if any, tariffs come in place. Whereas companies that are domestically centered would not be impacted by that as much, if at all. So that is causing a shift of companies now, and they're looking and they're talking about this in their earnings reports as we're in earnings season, of onshoring more of their work. And it is not even necessarily reshoring. It's not even bringing it from one country to the next because everyone's at risk here. There's no sacred cows currently in the world with a country that he's not going to negotiate tariffs with. So there's that shift right now of companies thinking about, does it make sense to onshore? It's not as much as just avoiding tariffs or minimizing the risk of tariffs. It's also the cost of labor. Can they bring it into the United States? What's the cost of doing that? It's a very expensive process to set up or to adjust supply chains. It's a very costly and difficult process, and it takes time. So it's not a decision companies will make easily. So the majority of them right now are saying, this is a consideration. We are looking at it, but we're taking a wait and see approach just to kind of see how this plays out. Again, remember, it doesn't feel like it because so many things are happening. It's only been a month. And how does this play out, and where does this play out? But it is a very delicate process. We're hearing that now in some of the earnings reports that are coming out, where some companies are saying, Walmart today mentioned that. They said, well, we have a little bit of risk here because this would impact us if this happened, especially even if Trump doesn't do tariffs on that country, that doesn't mean the country doesn't do it on us, i.e. China or something like that. So it is a little bit more of a watch and see how this plays out right now than an immediate action that anybody's taking. Some have gone in effect, like steel and things like that, which is greatly benefiting U.S. based companies. However, it does have impact overseas, and I would expect that this to continue. Interestingly, the Biden administration was trying to do very much the same thing Trump is, just doing it by a different fashion. So the Biden administration was more about printing more money and getting it out there, but there was a big incentive for companies to reshore onto the United States or to set up operations here, foreign companies. So interesting that there was actually they're doing the same thing. The idea of growing the U.S. economy by bringing more labor here, more businesses here, and whatnot was being done. It's just being done differently by each one of them. The big reason, again, we need to generate more revenue as a country for the reasons I'll talk about when I get to the debt part of it. So, around tariffs, the other one, immigration. Immigration is, again, a bit of a wild card. Currently, the Trump administration is focusing on criminal, illegal aliens, or again, undocumented, whatever word you prefer to use. I'm just using the official thing on the government's website. That being said, that is the focus at this time. I don't know what entails criminal or not. I don't know if it's a serious crime, a minor crime, or what that is, but that is the focus right now. It at this time does not appear to be going further than that, though the reality on the ground is it's very hard to be super targeted. There almost certainly is going to be other people impacted by this that are not necessarily criminal, just by the nature of how these operations are happening. Economically, again, I'm skipping past the social here and trying to stay with the economic. Economically, certainly, if there was a widespread deportation, we have a significant part of certain industries that are fueled by or supported by immigrant labor. Not only the people that would potentially be deported, but also the people that would be afraid to go to work because of the fear of being deported. So there is a potential real economic impact if it goes further than it currently has. At this point, nothing's been said that it will, and there's no reason to believe it will. But as we see every day, things change. So that is something that we're watching for. I'm not taking a position it will go one direction or the other, but we do need to keep an eye on it. That would have a real financial impact. So I'm going to skip over to the next part here, and then I'm going to take a little baby break to answer questions, and then go back into it, which is the one that most questions come about, which is Doge and what Doge is doing. A little background on all this. This idea of cutting waste and fraud in the government has been going on for many, many administrations. The wrapper, essentially, where this whole thing started, was actually put in place during Obama's term. I think it was called US Digital or something similar to that. It was an agency that was designed to find waste and fraud in the healthcare system to help fund Obamacare. So this kind of concept in this little department has existed for a long time. It's just sort of been shifted into Doge now. And the idea and concept is to find waste and fraud within the government and to bring that to the attention, because Doge themselves can't do anything. They have no power. All they can do is find information and share it with Congress or share it with the president, and they can decide whether or not to take action. So this has been done for years in different ways. The two biggest difference with Doge, number one, it's really noisy. They want to be transparent. They want everything posted. They want everybody to know what they're doing. Okay, so in the past, when there's been these, contractors brought in to look around and define things like this, it was quiet. They got the security clearances, they got hired, they went into whatever department they wanted to look into more deeply. It was done quietly, and then quietly it was given to Congress or the president or whomever, and they would decide whether to take action. This is a lot noisier, which pretty much is going to define the entirety of this administration. Not intending to offend anybody there. It's just the reality of it. It's just everything is a lot louder, a lot more out there when things are happening, even the smaller things. So that being said, that's one difference. The other difference is how widespread the work they're doing is. On my understanding at this point, and I've talked to people that I feel pretty comfortable saying this, they all have the appropriate security clearances, and they have no power to do anything, and there is oversight on what they're doing. That's a lot different than some of the things we may be hearing in the news. I do have really good connections in Washington, and I talk with them once a week, and it seems to be the case at this point. However, they are unlike a lot of contractors or people that come in or government people, they're very passionate about what they're doing and they really do want to find these things. So understand there are two levels to this. Level number one is true fraud. Okay, now true fraud, I've talked about this a couple webinars ago. The GAO, the Government Accountant's Office, has already discovered a lot of this in certain programs within the departments. They post this. So the GAO is a government office. They're basically the accountants of the U.S. government. You can go on their website, gao.gov. You can see all the stuff they found way before Doge even existed. And it's already there. There's a lot of stuff that's known fraud, and they give that information to Congress, and nothing ever happens. So I feel terrible. I feel terrible if that was my job. I work so hard. Here's information, and nobody cares. That being said, so there's known things that can be addressed. However, it does take Congress to take action. I'm not sure if this is something the president can do, but it does. It's not the department can't actually do anything about it. It needs to go further. So there is known fraud in the system. This is fraud. This is actually not a matter of is this a good program or a bad program? Is the money being misspent where it's not supposed to? This is just known fraud. That's a low-hanging fruit, and that would be something where they would have very little political pushback to working on. The other one is we don't think this is a good idea. We don't agree with this program that the money's being spent on. That and some things can be decided by the president. Other things has to go through Congress. Most everything that they're going to find is going to need to go through Congress. It's going to be approved funding. Approved funding, they can't just cancel. They need to. So I just hope I'm explaining this properly, is that Doge Group is not out there with that they can make any changes themselves, and they need to present this to Congress, and there are different areas they're looking for. My biggest concern is because I'm a data junkie with Doge, is there's been a couple of times when they have posted information that turned out not to be, well, I don't want to say not correct. Well, it was put out in a way that you could interpret it different ways. There wasn't a lot of clarity in how it was done. And I'll use an example with the posting about people over 150 years old collecting Social Security. So they had categories that they discovered that these people are on the Social Security rolls, are on the Social Security system of these various ages on up to 200 years old or so. Obviously, that would, brings people going, oh my gosh, how could this possibly happen? These people are collecting, dead people are collecting Social Security. But it turns out nobody, including Doge, ever said these people are collecting. They were simply bringing up errors in the system. But there are people that ran with that and made assumptions that at this point have not proven to be the case. So I think it's a little bit, again, new organization, probably how they report things, maybe rethought a little bit. They are really good, though, at coming out and correcting things when it's factually incorrect. They won't do it because people don't like it, but they will definitely do it when they're incorrect. Again, I'm not here to support or not support what they're doing. More so just kind of explaining a little bit is what we're watching as economists that we're doing. And again, I'll answer questions in a moment, but I want to make sure that was touched upon because that was probably the single biggest question that I got from everyone. Okay, final thing on the government spending is an interesting thing that's taking place right now is now department heads are actually coming out preemptively and starting to make their own suggestions for things they can cut. So, for example, we just got this from the Department of Defense. They're now under I call you audit, the review of Doge. And so the head of the Department of Defense, Hegsworth, sure I'm mispronouncing his name, my apologies, came out and said, we're going to cut by 8% a year. Now, it's kind of a big deal. It's a big deal for two reasons. Number one, the Department of Defense is an area that many Democrats said they would support Doge coming into the Department of Defense. And that they would be supportive of that. It doesn't seem like it's a political hit. It's an area that they actually got more Democratic support, especially early on. The second thing is that the Department of Defense has failed their last 7 audits. And it was interesting that he said, well, it would be nice if we would pass one of our audits after this is done. So there is that kind of focus is that perhaps some of these departments and people in these departments will look for ways to be able to cut spending that is just seen as unnecessary. Okay, again, they cannot change what Congress has approved, but they may be able to find efficiencies within their systems that will matter. The final thing is I want to talk a little bit about government employees here. And I completely understand and have the empathy that anytime someone loses their job, it is a huge impact on their lives. So as I talk about numbers and I talk about practicality and as I talk about government debt levels, it is not because I don't see this and understand it. It is simply because there's a big picture here that I want to talk about, which is something that I'll share with you. Maybe perhaps that would be more beneficial in a moment. I'll show you why all this matters. But before doing so, there was a massive spurt in government hiring over these last couple of years. A massive. They were the single biggest employer hiring in employment numbers for the last at least 2 years, maybe longer, is the federal government. So there has just been a huge, huge hiring spurt, for lack of a better term. So letting people go is more getting us in line with where we were before that at this point than it is some kind of massive gutting of the government system. All numbers are available on the government's website. I completely understand the union's desire to keep as many people employed as possible. I completely understand their feeling of responsibility to their workers and not having people let go. Every administration lets people go. This is more widespread. This is faster and affecting obviously more areas. But we're not somehow getting to a point where the government's not going to function. We're just getting us back in line more with the pre-pandemic numbers, adjusted again for population growth. At this point, that's subject to change. I'm just bringing that up because sometimes people say, "Oh, we're going to make all these great economic cuts, but then we're going to have a lack of services." I'm not seeing that at this point. So I'm going to take a little break here before I hop into classes back. Sorry, people. Before I go into all of the questions, some of the questions, and also before I go into the markets and economy, which may be why most of you are here. So I'm going to start with the questions because I want to make sure that everyone who is willing to spend an hour to listen to me talk is getting value out of it. So I'm going to go with some couple of questions here, and then I'll hop back into it. Okay. First one here. Can Doge really reduce the debt? Certainly. Certainly. Think of different layers. One is if you go to their website, they will report what they found and what's already been eliminated and opposed to other things. So it's a pretty good place. I haven't been there. I don't go there very often. So I just wanted, but I want to get a sense of it because the idea was supposed to be transparent. You can see it. And it is, again, one source. You won't actually be able to cross-check the information until the government starts to make these changes in a more widespread way. But I want to talk to you about something. And actually, your question was perfect. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to screen share everything fun with you. And I'm going to tell you why this matters and hop into the economy. And then I'll answer your questions. But the short answer is yes, they can. How they do it is going to be the challenge. The challenge because they can only do so much without congressional approval. And all Congress people, Democrat or Republican, all is not fair. Most Congress people, Democrat or Republican, really want to protect their world, their people, their area, their employees, their states, and when I say that, like they want to come up, whatever the voters are pushing them to do is what they're going to want to do. It's hard when you have a lot of pushback. It's hard to make some of these decisions. Politicians are not rewarded for getting our financial house in order. They're just not. Most people, that's not the highest priority when they elect someone and they send them to office. They want other stuff. It's rare that, hey, paying down the debt is the most important thing, and I'm willing to sacrifice to do that is not usually high. You don't really see that on too many campaign things. So with that being said, I'm going to share something fun with you. I got comments last time that people said, hey, I like it when you share things. I have a hard time sharing things on my screen because I feel like I'm not as present with everyone. But I thought I would share this with everybody. This is, well, let me just show it to you and just have some fun. Okay. Now you don't have to look at me. So there you go. The USDebtClock.org is great fun. You can see the address here just in case. And if you want it afterwards, just reach out to me. Happy to send it to you. So this can either be really interesting like it is for me, or for some people, they say, oh my gosh, I am seriously losing sleep after looking at this. So essentially what this is the US debt, and it's everything. It's also the revenue the government's getting. You can see my little pointer here. It's even things that are really little here, like How much union workers do we have? How much government employees? Government employees are all government employees, not just federal. And as you see, as I'm hovering over I'm hovering over government employees here. If you look at the top, you can see what that means and also the source of the data. Like this is the US Census, right? This is all government data. It's real time. Okay, so again, apologize. Not everybody finds it exciting as I do, but literally everything. Here's up here. Here's the revenue the government's getting from our us working. So anyone that's working as we speak, there you go. So the government's collecting from payroll tax, income tax, revenue per citizen. So anyway, the fun thing to be able to see all of the government spending. But let me share the scary one for you, or the most concerning one. This is the U.S. national debt. Our deficit is about $2 trillion. Once we spend $2 trillion more than we take in, even if the government is not adding any new programs or spending, okay, this is a very, very, very serious number. Let me share that we all want to be aware of, and we all want to pay attention to. And I'm going to turn this off for a moment here because I feel that this may be super distracting. But this is a really big situation. Is that we are past the point of turn that off. Okay. We are past the point of being able to easily solve for our deficit and our debt. We are past that point. We cannot raise taxes on the wealthy. There's not enough of them, and there's not enough money. That ship sailed a long time ago. Anyone who tells you differently doesn't understand finances or economics, or is just trying to, sell you something. The same goes, well, we just can't cut a bunch of programs and cover the debt. There's not even enough programs. I mean, you'd have to get rid of Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and all the rest of them, and no one's going to do that ever. That would seriously harm our system. So the solutions to this are going to be a combination of two things, and this is what I believe the current administration is trying to do. Whether or not they'll be successful, I have no idea. The idea of it is we need to increase our economic growth, bringing companies into the United States, factories and businesses in the United States, having other countries invest in us, stimulating the economy, doing things in a natural, organic way to boost economic growth, while at the same time trying to cut back government spending to, again, I know this is super subjective, to a reasonable level. Because the government spending has gone up significantly. The government spending per citizen of this country, it has skyrocketed. It is skyrocketed. The government is paying more and more per citizen over the years as we approve and vote for more and more programs, more and more government support, more and more government anything, right, that we want to have. So we can't have it all. Have to find some ways to cut this back a little bit. And it's for so long, and this is Democrats and Republicans and many administrations, this is not at all political. They have not been rewarded or pressured into making the changes that have to be made. So this is why you see me sometimes get passionate about this, and I'm going to tell you why before I hop into the rest of the questions. My highest responsibility is the protection and the growth of my clients' life savings. That is it. That is the most important thing that I'm here to do. You, who are clients that are watching this, have entrusted me with, in most cases, is your life savings, your company savings, your nonprofit savings. And I will do everything in my power to help ensure you're successful. This is my world. This is my commitment and service to all of you. I can't control what the government does outside of my voting. So when they do things that put that at risk, and I'm not talking about the stock market going down or the usual economic cycles, which will be with us forever, I'm talking about something that truly could take the system down, that could truly put everyone that I work for in dire straits, not just their portfolio, everything. Because if this doesn't work, we cannot support our economy. We cannot support the government's needs. This ends badly. And this used to be a far away thing, and it's getting a lot closer. The math is getting more difficult quickly. So I'm not sitting here to be negative or depressing or doomsayer by any means. There are solutions for this. Right now, this is the best we've got. And I'm not saying that this is the only way we can do things. I would love to hear different ways. The only way that I can see is we need to grow our economy, and we need to reduce government spending, because it's not going to be solved by raising taxes. Mathematically, it's impossible. You've seen the numbers. And it's not going to be solved by cutting government programs to the bone. It's going to be a little bit of both. Taxes will go up a bit. The economy will need to be grown and stimulated by bringing overseas investments in, so it's not running up our debt and it's not draining the individuals, right? Higher taxes and also higher costs of everything. Much of the inflation that we're experiencing today is a direct result of massive overspending by the government, printing this money and shoving it into the system is why it's too much money. That is the chasing too few goods is the basic cause of inflation. Yes, there are some other causes of certain individualized, localized inflation. Egg inflation is bird flu related and having to cull a massive, massive number of chickens. As a chicken owner myself, that's very sad. There are other factors that can include, but this is really important. So I hope that I explained well why this subject is important to me and why I may sometimes sound like I'm focused on the economics, and I am because I've got this responsibility for y'all. So again, apologize if that sounds a little corny, but that's what it all comes to. So I'm going to start going through the questions here, and then I'll get into some of the market things. Would you please give the news verification site again slowly? When I talked about verifying the news, I was talking about using AI to do so. So I use ChatGTP 4. It's the most recent version. It's a very nominal cost per month, but anything that I want to verify, I can put into it. And it's very, very helpful because I can ask it, can you pull out what's factual from what's not, especially in a subject I'm not super familiar with. I can type in what was the taxes for this group of people, blah blah blah, and it will answer me. And or I can put in a full news article. It will also state the sources of gathering the facts and information, so you can fact check or confirm that. So that for me personally has worked very well, is using AI. Again, real-time AI. You can use Grok, you can use whatever your preferred AI is. Just be absolutely positively sure never to put any personal information by any way, shape, or form, because once it goes into the little AI, it's everybody's data. But it's great to, again, really get what's facts as opposed to what's opinion. I can't tell you how many news headlines I've seen that says, this may happen. That's not news. That's two people talking around a cup of coffee or over a beer. It's not news. There's just a lot. And there's a lot of information that is increasingly biased. And even when I give you factual, I spoke previously about the fact I gotten questions about the tax cuts are for the wealthy. The tax cuts are for the wealthy. Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that was passed in 2017 under Trump's first term. The common narrative is the tax cuts for the wealthy. That's actually factually incorrect. And you can see it on the IRS website. You can see who got the most tax savings by tax bracket, federal tax bracket. Okay, so we're not adding on to all the joyous state taxes, especially for California. It's just simply the federal. On the IRS, you can compare 2017, 2018, and the people who saved the most on a percentage basis were people making between 50 and 150,000 a year. This is fact. It happened. It's fact. It's nothing to do with the narrative. Now, where people are correct in saying the wealthy saved more is the wealthy saved this tiny 0.07%. But if you're a billionaire, it probably put a few more dollars in your pocket, right? Or on a percentage basis, which matters more when you're dealing with such disparate numbers. It's actually the correct. And the doubling of the standard deduction definitely made a bigger difference on the middle class, lower middle class taxes. So that narrative can be slayed by just looking at facts and data. I'm just bringing that up as an example of go to the IRS, go to the actual source, government source, rather than a news media site helps. But definitely AI helps a lot. Like if you have your preferred AI, put a news story in there. It's pretty sobering sometimes to see how much of it is true and how much of it is not true. Let's see. This time the administration's not positive for the market. Is not positive for the market. I am nervous. My apology, because I don't know if that's a question or a statement. There are two parts to it. So initially, when the election was complete, the markets went into a really big rally. The idea of lower taxes and less regulations is always going to be positive for the markets, at least in the short term. There was a run up. There was been a large run up of the markets pretty much ever since. But that being said, the markets don't follow the president. They don't. And it's a common thing people like say, how'd the market do during this administration, this administration? But it's sort of an outlier because sometimes the markets are going up in anticipation of a future event, and that's what happened after the election. Other times they're going up based on a past event that happened, and the money is now, or the new policy or regulations are having an impact. So it's very, very difficult to time the market around around the president's term. It's very difficult because it's not like they leave office and everything they did is done. It still plays out over time. So the biggest pros to the market with the new administration is the idea of less regulation, a focus on economic growth, bringing in investments from overseas, reducing government spending, reducing taxes, regulations. That's generally a positive. The biggest potential risk to the market is the unpredictability of the Trump administration. And you've seen that, right? You can say, oh, we're going to do this. And sometimes the markets got a little smarter about the fact that he says a lot of things, doesn't actually do them. It's still, if you're a company and you're trying to make decisions, 5 years out, and you're making this massive investment and you don't know what tariffs are going to be, and you're doing overseas work, it might cause you pause, right? It might cause you to reconsider your expansion or expand differently. So there's certainly risks in that. However, I would say that comes with every administration. The Biden administration, the biggest risk with them was a lot of regulations, a lot of trying to control what types of companies would be successful and what wouldn't. A lot of extra programs kind of put in place with a greater cost to companies. So those weren't really known about him when he came into office, but he kind of went more in that direction. Again, I'm not saying he's a good or bad president. I'm just talking about economic policies. But other things he did, like incentivizing companies to reshore, which he did in 2022, was something that was saying is good. If you got that government money, right, that definitely saved you some costs, and it also means inspired you to grow here in the United States. So each presidency and each administration will do things differently. Overall, none of them really want to kill the economy. They really don't. It's not a good thing. It's not anything. Doesn't matter how far to the left or right there. Nobody wants to kill the economy. They just have different ideas of how the economy should look. So hopefully that answers that question. If that wasn't exactly what you're asking, please re-ask it. Okay. Do you anticipate something that like a current devaluation as a potential lever to deal with the national debt? Oh, currency devaluation. It's actually probably going to go the other direction more than likely, at least in the short term. It's the benefit to devaluing the currency would be less than the risk of intentionally devaluing the currency. So I don't think that is something that will be focused on. We're more likely to see a stronger dollar, especially in the near term. Also, you have to think of it this way, is our debt issues and deficit issues are much more of an internal problem right now. They're not yet an external problem. That's where the risk happens, right? When it becomes an external problem. So if you're devaluing your currency at the same time, people are getting concerned about your debt levels. That's not a good thing when you depend on the rest of the world to buy your bonds to fund the 36, I'm not going to read that giant number, the 36 trillion or so in debt. So it would be a risky move to do in a way that it could backfire very easily. So I don't see that as being the intention. I would imagine in the short term, more than likely, our currency is going to strengthen based on the policies that are in place and also being proposed right now. All righty. What do you make of Trump's relationship with Russia's Putin? Okay, I'm going to get in trouble. Maybe. Okay. Sorry, I just really, my highest intention is not to have anyone offended. I think Trump is very mercantile. I don't think Trump has these, with the most part, not certainly with these leaders and all these people in politics and in Washington and overseas. I don't think he has a relationship with anyone. Okay, this is my personal opinion. So again, forgive me if I offend anybody with this one. I think it's all about how he positions things, all about how he can find the win. And so in the beginning, when he came in, he said, I want to solve this war on day one. Then he came out and said it's not practical, which is true. It's not practical. He wants to get this done. And he put the word out there, and Putin didn't call him. Zelensky did. Putin didn't call him. Trump doesn't like that. He does not want to be the one to call. You call me. I'm Trump. I'm the president of the United States. I'm not calling you. So he went after Putin publicly. and made threats. We're going to make our sanctions worse. We're going to take the restrictions off on Ukraine, firing rockets into Moscow, our rockets into Moscow. He was all about, hey, we're going to crush you, Russia. And not that long after, he got the call and he had a conversation and a meeting with Putin. He also went to Zelensky and said, hey, we want to buy some of your minerals. And, we spent, we've given in dollars 170 or 130 billion, I forgot what it is, and then in materials and other things we've given them another 100 billion. I don't know the exact number right now. Anyway, we've given Ukraine a whole lot of money in different formats: weaponry, support, actual cash, etc. So the idea, Trump says, okay, well, we want to have rights to $500 billion of your minerals in exchange for not only the help we've already given you, but also for future help, because we're going to help rebuild after this war is over. And Zelensky wanted more. He wanted to make a deal more favorable to Ukraine. Well, obviously that made Trump not very happy, and so now they're fighting back and forth with words. But basically, he's been told this peace deal is going to get less attractive for you if you don't come to the table. Russia sees everything is great. Oh, we're on great terms with America again. This is wonderful, blah, blah, blah. And that has not been said because it depends how this whole thing plays out. So I hope that wasn't too much of a long story within that. The idea of it is when people say, oh, Trump is Putin's buddy or Xi's buddy or, sorry, totally escaping me, the North Korean leader, any of these, these types of people's buddies, he's playing people because he wants an advantage for himself and for the United States. And I think that really goes along with his history. And like I said, I'm not saying it's a good or bad thing. Whatever gets the job done, I'm sure is how he sees it. I'm only saying that I don't see him as being anyone's buddy. He's ultimately going to look out for the United States interests. And he's going to want to come away from this saying, hey, we won something, and ideally financially. That's why I say Trump is very mercantile. He sees things that way, more so than I need somebody's friendship. What effects will this have? What effect may this have on world trade? Not sure what that is. So I'm sorry, you probably when you typed it. So just let me know what that is. The person who typed it. What do you think about air traffic safety at this time? The reports say that the job is understaffed, safe to fly, effects on airline stocks. I actually do have somebody that's really, really at the highest level of a national airport, and I picked his brain when this all happened. And I was, obviously I don't know what the cause, but they know more now than they did then. But I said, that was my question. I said, how is staffing? And again, one person's opinion, but I would say in a position that it would be worth considering that along with other things. It is not really an issue that is widespread. It is an issue that can take place during moments in time. Is it a safety issue? I can't really honestly answer that question because I'm not familiar with it. I don't know specifically what it is. I would definitely say that when the head of FAA has confirmed this, laying people off of departments, the reaction always is, oh my God, there won't be enough air traffic controllers. And no, it's generally not the people in the most important positions of safety and that we rely on. Those are not usually Those not the people that are going. It's going to be the support people and more recently hired people in departments, perhaps DEI and things that are being eliminated. So just because they're letting somebody say, oh, they're letting all these people go in this department, that means we're going to have this terrible outcome of death and destruction and harm. It's not necessarily the case. It depends not only who's being let go, but also how are other people being moved around. As I said, layoffs happen all the time, sometimes massively just because funding is lost or gained. Hiring is because funding is gained. So I apologize, I can't answer that question better. I'm not an air traffic expert, but I don't see it as, from what I've heard, I don't see it as necessarily correlated. As far as safety overall, I don't know the actual number, but I bet you if you do the math on your risk of flying or driving, I'm pretty dang sure your risk of driving is far greater than your risk of flying, even though airline accidents get a lot more press than however many people died that day of a car crash. So you hear 60 people died in an airplane. How many people died that day in a car crash? So that might be a way of looking at it too, is the actual numbers of deaths in these various modes of travel rather than the headlines. Um, okay. Sorry, I'm trying to get to the rest of these here in case I missed anything. Okay. What do you anticipate? When do you anticipate LLP approving BTC ETFs and ITB BTC? Sorry, these are Bitcoin ETFs. This is enhancing the ability for people to be able to trade cryptocurrencies in more widespread platforms. I have no idea the timing. I don't think it's the highest thing on the new administration's list, and this is probably likely going to be the new head of the SEC, and how this is prioritized. And I'm not sure if this is something that can be done just by a head of the department or if this is something that'll need to go through Congress. So I'm not 100% sure on that. So I would say nobody knows the timing. We'll just have to see what they post on their site specifically. Okay. What effects will our tariffs have on world trade? Okay, there we go. So what effects will tariffs on world trade? It will just shift how companies and countries are doing things. That's going to be the biggest thing. It's going to shift how countries and companies are doing things. No different than global conflict does that. A lot of US companies did business with Russia, and then the sanctions hit. So if you had businesses and restaurants and banks and all the other things, a lot of US and European countries were doing business with Russia, and then the sanctions hit. They had a day. It was shut down. So tariffs a little less disruptive than that, but anytime you are depending on anything from overseas, anytime that you are dependent or you have operations overseas, this is an ongoing risk. It is no different than what I look at when I'm investing my clients in companies overseas. Right? It is a lot about, you have to look at the political risk, you have to look at the country risk, you have to look at obviously trade risk. This is an ongoing thing that's always going to be there. Sometimes you can kind of see it coming and you say, hey, this country is getting a lot less free market. We don't want to be here anymore. We can see new laws coming in place. In Europe, especially Europe tends to consistently surprise me with some of the rules they come up with when they're seen as, like a free developed part of the world, and some of their rules and laws are a bit odd and also difficult to be an investor in. And so that being said, sometimes you have time to plan, and other times it's just more of a surprise. The tariffs now, I don't really see as any more of a big deal than any other time, because again, you always have these risks, natural disasters, things like that. The difference is it's going to be in the news a lot more. I think it's going to be a tool, and it's working, right? He gets meetings with the heads of state that they want to come see him. Japan, India, bunch of countries. Sorry, I can't think of all of them right now. They come and they say, we want to invest in the United States. Saudi Arabia, we want to invest in the United States. We're going to commit this much money. Please don't tariff us. No. I know I'm not privy to the conversations, but it's working. And if it's working, I have a feeling it's going to continue. And if somebody calls this bluff, then he'll put tariffs on them. So I have a feeling it's going to continue, and that is going to continue to create an imbalance in global trade. Let me do a couple more of these, and then I just want to also touch upon the market a little bit, because I feel like that one's important too. What should investors do under Trump? Actually, that's a really good question. I think it depends. It's no different than what investors should do under any other leader. No different. It depends on what you need. What is your time horizon? How long, when I say time horizon, how long can this money be invested before you need it? That's really critical. How much ride can you take, up and down day to day to get the growth over time? Do you need it to be liquid or not? In other words, can you sell it any day the market's open? Does it have a lockup period? This and many more considerations go into how to invest. I would say on a high level in the Trump period is that a diligent eye on a rapidly changing environment is going to be critical. This is not a sit back and put it in the index, because it's going to be really different. You want to be a lot more tactical and a lot more surgical than you would be in different kind of market environments. That's definitely throughout a portfolio. But however, more importantly, other things I talked about, like I said, it's really important to have any investing you do should have a plan. It should have a purpose, and it should have a way to track if it's on goal, on target with that purpose. That's critical. You don't just invest to invest. There should be more to it. I can't invest my clients' money if I don't know what its purpose is. and nor should anyone else. So that's more important than, again, who's in office. But the biggest difference right now is a lot more tactical, a lot more surgical, not big baskets, small moves sometimes can make a difference, because you're seeing an example of earnings reports or companies are like, this is amazing, we're doing so well, blow it out of the water. Another company comes out and says the world is ending. We're getting a lot more disparity, and that's going to continue with all the changes that are happening. Let's see here. Let's see. I said, can you explain Doge? I think I did that. If not, I'm again, I can go over it again. I just want to be sure I'm getting all that. Will the IRS layoffs, will it delay tax refunds? Probably not, because they laid off less people, or about the same number of people that they hired in the last 2 years. So this, we all got our, well, I haven't had a refund for years, but we all had our taxes processed about the same. The biggest thing that's going to help the IRS process more quickly is technology. Just like all the rest of the government. So remember, we're talking about cutting programs. It sounds so horrible, right? Cut this, cut that, cut this, cut that. And some departments are like, hey, we want this. We know it's a mess. We want this oversight. Other departments have been less cooperative, and you can kind of see sort of the difference with what's happened. USAID has been a problem for years with Congress, years with the GAO, of giving them the information that was asked of them. They just kind of felt like they were maybe above all that. And they also were the ones that were the hardest hit by being downsized and merged into another department. So you may see more of this kind of, how can we streamline operations? Do we really need this many workers? Can we use more technology? Just like all companies have done, the private sector years ago. The government is just a little further behind with that. So if we have more technology and we need less workers, and we have such a low employment number, they go into, say, the private sector, you can do the same level, if not more, with less. I mean, you look at what Amazon does every day, and they don't have nearly the workforce for an equivalent amount of labor within the government. So it is possible to do technology, but here you go. It's going to cost money. It's going to take time, which means we've got to cut more stuff to pay for it, right? And also pay down our debt. Okay, last couple questions here. Question about, are we going to get stimulus checks from Doge? Yeah, that one just came out as an idea. So Doge currently has, I should have just kept that calculator up instead of you guys looking at my face. So Doge has basically what we've saved already, and then what we'll save if the recommendations get taken up by Congress, right? So it's kind of different numbers. But that being said, there was a talk about, it would be really great to give that money back to the taxpayers. Like, we should share in what's been saved from, making the government more efficient. There's two considerations with that. It depends how it's done. So number one, it's not actually taxpayer money. It's sort of like our future children paying the interest on that debt's money, because the taxes didn't go up. Taxes haven't gone up meaningfully in the United States since 2017, when the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act passed. It was set to expire at the end of this year. It's likely going to be extended. They're working on that negotiation right now, and next month's webinar we'll talk about the debt ceiling negotiation. But that being said, this wasn't a tax increase that needs to be paid back to taxpayers. It's sort of more of a, hey, we're paying down the government debt. So really what they should be doing with that money is paying down the debt, right? Really, at the deficit at least, right? Get that 2 trillion. If you can just get the 2 trillion, grow by $1 trillion, cut $1 trillion. If you can just get that, it's huge, huge for our nation, for the future stability of it. There is, though, a scenario where some of that money could be distributed, and if it's done wisely, it'd be distributed to people that could really use it. So perhaps, and I'm not saying they should do this, I'll probably get in trouble because by saying this, perhaps some of that money, like the majority, goes to pay down the deficit, right? And the other side of it, maybe some of it gets distributed to people that make less than X amount a year, as a give back the debt. I don't know what the heck you're going to call it. I see that. I can see it being a populist thing. I could see Trump, tying to that, because he likes that populist. He's become very much the populist. No taxes on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, all things he's trying to get through Congress right now, or in the upcoming negotiation here. I can see that maybe happening. Maybe some of that money gets distributed. However, I don't know, because the fiscal hawks in the Republican Congress, they're not going for this. The more populist side is really going to go for it. it also makes it harder for the Democrats to push back against it, because if it's going to people below a certain income level, it would be very hard to push back against the idea of getting the savings back to the American people. So I can see it happening, but it's really be more of a political, look what we're doing thing, marketing tool, than it will be making a really big difference in the scheme of things. But it can also stimulate the economy. I remember distinctly being in a Target store right after the stimulus checks came out in the pandemic, right? And I was like shocked in the middle of the pandemic, and you got the stores full of people, and their carts are full of toys and gosh knows what else. Like, I had not ever seen that. I hardly ever go into a Target, but I knew that was really weird. And later it clicked. I'm like, oh, stimmy checks, got it. So that really, I mean, that's money in the economy, right? That was one store at one point in time, and that's what, so that can make a difference in the short term and can help. So I can see where that could be attractive. However, like I said, if you're just giving all back to the people, you're not solving the underlying problem. So hopefully it will be used wisely if done at all. Okay, last one. Um, how are you able to service all your individual clients' needs with so many fluctuations in the market? That's a longer conversation. I think I'll save it for next time. I know my clients. I only work with people that are referred to me. And so and other people go to other team members at Sequoia. So Sequoia is growing quite rapidly, but I'm only working with people referred to me directly. So I know who I'm working for, and it's of the heart, and I work a lot of hours. So that's a high level. But I have a technique and a strategy that works really, really well. The most important thing is knowing the people I work for. I'm never going to be too big personally myself that I don't know everybody and what I'm doing for them. And that makes a huge difference. It's actually really interesting. Fun fact, take it for what it is. I can't tell how many days I'm working on portfolios. It's a trading day for me. I'm working on portfolios. I'm trading client portfolios, rebalancing them. I can't tell how many times I got an email or call from them saying, hey, I was thinking of you. Like, yeah, because I was thinking of you when I'm trading your portfolio. There's a connection. I work for people I'm connected to, and that makes a difference. So that being said, I'm going to quickly talk a little bit about the markets, and then we'll talk about what's coming up. So first, I want to thank you all for your patience. I know I said that the February was going to be a live and in-person event. Due to a conflict in the schedules of some of the people are going to participate, we had to push it out. It's going to happen in April now. I want to say it's like the 21st, or it's like a Monday around there. I'll get the exact dates, and we'll be getting out to you soon. It's going to be at the Hotel Paradox in Santa Cruz. It's going to be an evening, and we're going to have Steiner again. Okay, he was a really, really good speaker. Everyone liked him. He was one member, told you all about AI before you knew what the heck AI was. Okay, sharp guy, really fun, and we're getting him again. So that's going to be in April. Next month's webinar in March is going to be Goldman Sachs speaking, Brian Nash of Goldman Sachs. So I'll be speaking a lot less. You're going to hear Goldman Sachs version. Many of you have heard Brian before. In fact, when he's been at our events before, people want to hear him more than want to hear me. So he's worth hearing. It's really important. Sometimes we like to bring other people in. You don't just have to hear Kristina. You can hear some other people. And then coming up this summer, of course, we'll have the ARK Invest people out talking about ARK Invest, because a lot of people have that interest there as well. Economy, markets. I'm just going to say very quickly, nothing's changed from what I said the last two webinars. Expect volatility in the first half. The market has run up a lot without a correction. We need to let some air out of the tire. Do not let this worry you. It is not anything that we need to react to. Okay, it could potentially provide opportunity even for most of you. Again, everybody's different. Everybody's strategy is different. Everybody's risk tolerance is different. But there can be some opportunity coming, but there's going to be volatility. Second half of the year still looks like to be pretty good, as at least I can tell by the data we have up to date. So the first part, more volatility. Don't let that alarm you, because what will accompany the volatility is going to be the news saying, oh my God, we're all going to die. It's this, it's that, it's this, it's that. And then again, people are, with the rapidity of all the change that's happening in the world right now, it's going to create more fear, right? Because there's already all this, oh my gosh, the news every day, there's all these big things happening, and I don't know where to look. So there's already that little bit of unease for a lot of people that are uncomfortable with the rate of change and the speed of change. On top of that, you're going to have market volatility. The market volatility was going to happen, whether it was Trump whether it was Biden, whether it was Harris, it didn't matter. This is overdue. This is a natural part. You've all seen the charts. They go up, they pull back, they go up again. So we're overdue for that. And it would be healthy to have it sooner rather than later. And if it does, again, it will provide more opportunity. That is the price of admission to having the growth that you have, which you've experienced over these last years. So I want to bring that up. The second half is still looking pretty good at this point, but I am tracking that because any massive economic change could impact that. But at this point, I don't have any immediate concerns about the market outside of traditional volatility. Let me make sure everything here. And for conventional last minute, I really want to take a moment to express while I am fascinated by the economic changes and the numbers and the data and news and all the things that are happening, I realize that not everybody is. There's a lot of people out there that are really stressed, that are really concerned, that are very worried, sometimes for political, social, or personal beliefs, and other times because of the news or information that they consume. So if I may gently suggest that if you find yourself in that place, regardless of your beliefs or regardless of what's happening in the world, take a little time for self-care, whatever that means to you. Be it a walk in nature, whether you roll around in the grass with your dog, go hug your horse or your pet rats. Just me. Whatever that is for you, your spiritual practice, your self-care practice, keeping the balance between the mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual aspects is really, really important for yourself, for your good, for your health. So I just say, if you feel this way, if you feel the stress, if you feel angst or anxiety or anything like that, I have a whole bunch of really cool things that my clients have shared that they're doing that are in that place, and they're really brilliant. I mean, I'm really, really good ideas. I almost feel like I'm going to put together a little, here's your book, whatever. Again, it's not just news. It can be other things happening in your life, but there's some pretty good ways to not worry too much about this. And listen, if you're my client, I'm looking at it for you. I pay attention to it for you. I will take action if necessary. Don't spend any more time in the news, in the media, and any of this stuff than you feel comfortable, and anything that's impacting your personal, again, fulfillment and happiness in life. I'll do it so you don't have to. With that being said, any questions that come up, anything I didn't answer today, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. Sometimes I'm talking on a very high level to a lot of people, and there could be something that you want to drill down a little bit more specifically. If you didn't capture the US debt clock, I'm happy to send you that information as well. Fun little tool. And also too, if there's any information that you read or hear and you really would like to know, is this accurate or not? Happy to send it. I will just put it into the ChatGPT for you if you don't have it yourself, and I'll tell you what the results are, keeping my own opinions out of it. With that being said, thank you so much for spending your time. Next month, Brian Nash from Goldman Sachs, VP. Really good. I said you've heard him before. He's a good speaker. Month after is live and in person for those of you that can make it, and we'll live stream it on Zoom for those of you who can't. So with that being said, thank you very much for spending time with me this afternoon, morning, or evening, or whenever you read the recording. And I really appreciate your questions and time. And I'll see you next month. Bye for now.